This is Tom Parmalee with CemeteryVision.com. Joining me today is Michael Higgs, the manager of the Cave Hill Heritage Foundation in Louisville, Kentucky, as well as the president of the Kentucky Cemetery Association, and I think soon to be president of the Southern. We'll chat about that in a second. Thanks so much for joining me, Michael.
Thanks, Tom. A great pleasure to be with you today and a great opportunity to share some insight about Cave Hill Cemetery and what we do here.
Well, I really appreciate you joining me as I'm just getting CemeteryVision.com going.
Mhm.
You have been working in the cemetery profession for quite some time. I'm always interested in hearing how people got into this profession in the first place. So, can you share a little bit with me, how you found your way to the cemetery business?
Certainly, and frankly, it was all by pure happenstance. I do not have a single family member at all that has ever worked in the death care profession. It was just a strange coincidence of being a student just coming out of high school that was looking for a position and trying to find a way forward as I was moving through undergraduate studies. And the very first position that I was hired into was a contract security guard, believe it or not. I was offered an opportunity to interview here at Cave Hill Cemetery. And literally, that's how my story here began some 25 years ago. So beginning as a contract security officer assigned to Cave Hill Cemetery, and then working through the different ranks, if you will, to eventually become the head of security here at the cemetery, moving through my undergraduate studies. My intent in life was to be a teacher. My preparation educationally is in English and secondary education, and I love being with students, love teaching, love that opportunity to interface and build connections. And as time would have it, as progress would be made by working here, and the exposure to the great professionals that I was really had the chance to learn from in those early years, our local funeral directors, our leadership here, certainly our board of directors here at Cave Hill. They really gave a good footprint, a good way to understand what we do, the purpose of being in cemetery service and just being in a service oriented mindset and profession. And it was just a perfect marriage of interest and certainly something that has carried me, quite some distance ahead in time.
That's an amazing story from a security guard to where you are today after all these years. And it's funny, I am also a former high school teacher, and here we
Mhm.
both are talking about the cemetery business. Um,
Correct.
Tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about Cave Hill Cemetery. I know it's a beautiful cemetery, but some folks beyond your area might not be too familiar with it. So why don't you share with me a little bit about Cave Hill, and in particular, a little bit more about Cave Hill Heritage Foundation.
Certainly. So Cave Hill Cemetery is an 1848 Victorian-era garden-style cemetery. Our origin is much the same as Mount Auburn, the very first rural garden cemetery up in Cambridge. And the entire purpose of this type of cemetery is to be a communal space. It's a space to serve a practical purpose, to honor the lives have, that have been lost, but also to act as a living memorial for those that are surviving, those individuals. So since 1848, we have served the Louisville community. We have about 142,000 souls at rest on the grounds here at Cave Hill Cemetery. We're about 300 acres in size and one of the largest nonprofit cemeteries in Kentucky. Some of the notables that are buried here include George Rogers Clark, who was part of the westward movement in the United States and westward migration, boxing legend Muhammad Ali. Of course, KFC icon Colonel Harlan Sanders is buried here as well, and many others that paved the way, not only locally, but nationally in history. And it's just fascinating to see the depth and breadth and stories of those that are at rest here within this cemetery. The Cave Hill Heritage Foundation is a separate organization. We actually have three companies here at Cave Hill Cemetery in total. We have a Cave Hill Investment Company, which manages all the capital investments for the corporation. Then we have the Cave Hill Cemetery Company, which provides the bulkhead of staff that we have here. We have about 64 or so staff members that run the cemetery on a daily basis. That's in management to grounds operations, administrative operations, sales. So we have a pretty large staff overall. Then we have this other organization, the Cave Hill Heritage Foundation, and we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, much like any other nonprofit that you would see, say the Cancer Society or something along those lines. And we have a very specific charge as an organization that supports the long-term vision and preservation of Cave Hill Cemetery. So we are focused directly on preserving the past for the future. So we engage that mission through three direct focus areas. One is the restoration of monuments and historic structures on the grounds here at Cave Hill Cemetery. We are also involved in the preservation of the arboricultural setting. We're level 2 accredited arboretum here at Cave Hill with over 9,000 individual trees on the grounds. And it's very important that we preserve this part of our story and the critical value that the cemetery brings to our local community. And then we also provide educational opportunities for the community at large. So we typically host over 150 different programs or more, sometimes per calendar year. And those are grounds tours on foot, by golf cart, special events. So we are a pretty busy organization with all the different community outreach opportunities that we generate and that people generate on our behalf that involve us. So, for example, a few years ago, we had a great opportunity to work with our friends up at Greenwood Cemetery. Rich Moylan, the just recently retired president there, as well as the folks at Woodlawn, they have a program called Bridge to Crafts Careers. It's been exclusive to operate in those two cemeteries in New York State. We brought it to Cave Hill. We work with World Monuments Fund to bring that program here to Cave Hill Cemetery the first time it ever left New York State. And it was quite the success to have a group of interns that were focused strategically on historic stonemasonry. So a partnership was born with our Masonry Union, World Monuments Fund leading the charge. Everyone had a different part in this process, and we had a fully funded grant program to institute here, and that has really paved the way for us to grow that restoration program that we have. We have just wonderful pieces of monument art that are just priceless here within the cemetery of granite and bronze and other media that must be preserved. Within the arboricultural setting, we're working continuously on the Arboretum accreditation and advancing that through various initiatives. And the educational programs grow continuously. We're publishing documents, we're leveraging community relationships and growing those opportunities to be in front of the community as a whole, to talk about our suffrage leaders, for example, the interpretation of monument design, and many other different aspects of the cemetery and what it brings and what it means, the value essentially that it provides to the greater Louisville community and surrounding area.
That is amazing, the breadth of the work you do. I'm curious, how many employees do you have there at the foundation? And just hearing all that work, it
Sure.
must be a considerable number, I would think.
Well, actually, no, we have a very small team at the foundation level. As I mentioned, we do work very closely with the cemetery. All of our companies are in direct alignment and in focus in that manner. So within our foundation office, there are two of us. We have two historic stonemasons that are working in the field, working on a variety of projects. And then we partner with our other teams across the cemetery company. So we're working with our arborist team, we're working with our horticulture team, and we're leading projects and across both companies and using a multi-team approach. So we have a small number of people within the confines, if you will, of the Cave Hill Heritage Foundation, but we work with multiple individuals across the entire company. It's just a great team effort all the way around.
And you mentioned the three sort of separate components or branches of the
Mhm.
cemetery. I'm curious, do you rely, like some cemeteries do, on a good portion of volunteers to conduct some work as well, or?
We do. We do have volunteers here. As far as the restoration aspect of things, we do try to maintain our own team that has a certain skill level and certain training before we advance any of that work. So we rely on our own teams for that. But as far as the volunteers are concerned, we do rely heavily on our volunteers for especially our docent program. We have tremendous docents that are leading programs continuously here. They're all retired physicians, retired veterinarians, retired attorneys, and they bring a great amount of specialty interest and research capacity to really grab a subject, research it, and then develop a program around it, from steamboat captains to interpretive symbols and iconography on monuments, any range of things that you can even conjure up. We can talk about it in this type of cemetery setting. And then we also rely on our volunteers to help deliver some of our grief programming. There are professional volunteers with our local healthcare partners. So one of the elements that we also provide is aftercare to the family members that we serve through Cave Hill Cemetery. So we have a complete walking through grief program. We're partnering with one of our local hospitals in their chaplaincy program, and we provide grief walks for essentially a nature immersion opportunity and dialogue building opportunity for families to build community that are of a like mindset of loss and that are trying to take a step forward from the position that they're currently finding themselves in.
I take it in your role as manager, I hear the word foundation and I immediately think of raising money or soliciting donations. I imagine that's also a big part of what you do as well.
Certainly, so we're very involved. We have a very heavy responsibility to steward the landscape, to steward the resources that we have, and that does require some initiative for fundraising. So we are writing grant requests as promptly as we can. We are working with our families. The majority of individuals that support the Cave Hill Heritage Foundation are intrinsically tied to the cemetery. So either they're lot holders or they are lineal descendants or they are friends of those lineal descendants or lot holders. So we know our families and we're able to build a dialogue. We can tell a story and then cast a vision very succinctly with the mission and vision focus that we have. So fundraising is a huge thing here. We also rely on our corporate sponsors as well to keep everything moving forward on a yearly basis.
Now, you mentioned some of the famous residents there, Muhammad Ali, Colonel Sanders. I'm curious, is there a favorite feature or maybe a section of the cemetery that you personally really enjoy?
Oh, and there are many different areas of the cemetery that are just picturesque, but one of my most favorite places to visit is actually a monument. It's a gorgeous monument, the largest lot within Cave Hill Cemetery. It's about 1/2 acre in size. There are only three people buried on that lot, believe it or not. And there are no lineal descendants that we are aware of that will ever be interred there at any future point. And it's a beautiful monument, Roman inspired, for Preston Pope Satterwhite and his wife Florence Brokaw Martin Satterwhite. So they have just a gorgeous dome type monument, rotunda. It is based on a floral motif. Florence loved gardening. She loved flowers. And when she passed, her husband, Dr. Satterwhite, built this memorial just for her. It was his true expression of love. And it was certainly something that he did not spare any opportunity to really shine in that element of love and appreciation for his wife. So he worked with a gentleman named Horace Trombert, who was designing large estates for people like the Rockefellers. And this was the only cemetery monument that we have found that he actually designed, Horace Trombeer, that is, and that Preston Pope Satterwhite had placed here at Cave Hill. So it has in the center just a gorgeous statue designed by Sally Farnham, who did the Simon Bolivar statue up in Central Park in New York. And then it, as I mentioned, it has woven in into the interior of the dome about 5 or 6 different floral patterns. Everything is carved in this beautiful marble that was quarried out of the state of Tennessee and has a pink hue to it when it's slightly wet after a rain. And then around it, we have this beautiful landscaping of these Delaware Valley azaleas. It's just a beautiful, quaint setting. We have a lot of weddings here, or at that lot in particular, because it sits down in a swell on the landscape, and it's just fascinating. And of course, we have a national cemetery as well on the grounds here with about 6,100 soldiers, over 400 or so from the United States Colored Troop, which was a fascinating find. We didn't even realize that until the last 2 years. So there's just so much here that it's hard to extrapolate one thing, but those are our two in particular, the Satterwhite Monument as well as the Cave Hill National Cemetery.
I'm guessing, I think you said the cemetery dates to 1848, if I recall correctly. I imagine you must have a lot of Civil War history woven in to your cemetery in some fashion.
We do, especially in the National Cemetery. The overwhelming majority of those interments are from the Civil War, from all states across the North. And there's a large story behind how those individuals got here to Louisville and at Cave Hill. But then within the cemetery itself, you can simply walk through on a casual stroll and look over and see a large obelisk with a shield or perhaps a sword on it, and that might have been a Civil War captain or a major. And using the translation of the symbols as well as some of the story that has been left behind, you can just unravel fascinating tales of triumph and tragedy as well.
Now, you are president of the Kentucky Cemetery Association, and I believe you're about to become president of the Southern as well. So, why don't you
Correct.
share with me, a little bit about both those associations, what your advocacy priorities are? I imagine there might be some overlap there. And just tell me a little bit about your roles with each of those groups.
Sure. So, yes, and correct. I'm currently serving as the president of the Kentucky Cemetery Association. I've had the great opportunity to serve in that role for several years now and have moved through the vice presidency and director's roles up to this point, and have been very blessed to work with a great board. We have about 12 members that are on the board right now, representing over 100 different associate or cemeteries across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And the focus of the Kentucky Cemetery Association, it's really bent on the promotion and development of appropriate practice and management and grounds operations, ethical leadership for its members. So it's a membership-based organization. Uh, Kentucky is a state in which we do not necessarily have, if you will, tremendous amounts of legislation that are I guess, if you will, focused on uh, licensing and things of the sort. So there is a greater amount of autonomy within each individual cemetery in the Commonwealth. And so that the Kentucky Cemetery Association is strictly focused on creating the opportunity to build leadership, build those skills, share those skills at a larger level through programs, partnerships, and other opportunities that exist. So we're a pretty healthy organization, as I said, over about 100 members strong across the entire state. And we are working strategically on partnering currently with the West Virginia Cemetery Association for a joint conference that will occur in August. So we're building a lot of momentum for that, and we're consistently in front of our members with Zoom trainings and opportunities just to share best practices. That's really a key thing about what we do. The Southern Cremation Cemetery, or excuse me, the Southern Cemetery Cremation Funeral Association, or the SCCFA, that is a 16 state regional association covering Texas all the way up. upwards, into Missouri, or sorry, and in Arkansas, and then moving to the east, to the seaboard. So we cover a wide swath of area. And that organization, we just actually rewrote our mission statement for the Southern, is very much focused on providing excellence in leadership in the death care profession, especially focused on fellowship education and legislative advocacy. So those two organizations do overlap. We have a lot of growth and a lot of potential that is occurring on both the Kentucky side as well as the regional and the southern side. Looking forward to the major convention that is coming up in literally just over a month away from now, as we're going to be gathering down in San Antonio with Texas and some other states. So a lot of great things going on with both associations.
Well, I guess my last question for you would be, is there any particular challenge right now that you're confronting at Cave Hill, or maybe some kind of new initiative, or something you're working on that you want to highlight and share with our listeners?
Certainly. So we're working on a multitude of projects here at Cave Hill Cemetery. You think as a whole, the profession, just speaking as a whole, is seeing some different challenges. We're seeing some different writing that is occurring in different trade publications, and all very much relevant. I think some of the things that the the profession as a whole is facing are issues revolving around relevance and determining whether your organization is relevant, how it should be relevant to the community you're serving. Also, working with, of course, financial viability. You to make sure that you have the options in place to continue to serve families and continue to serve multiple generations ahead. Also looking at quality service and making sure we have the right people in the right place, the right time, building those teams to really launch things forward. So those are some general things I would say the profession itself is really looking at in the long term. Not unlike any other business, I must say. But as far as Cave Hill Cemetery is concerned, we have a lot of great opportunities that we have in front of us. We're building the monument restoration internship program currently right now. So we're working with a variety of corporate partners to help get that in motion, building that long-term endowment on the foundation side. So those are some of the different things that we are working on here at Cave Hill to really launch us forward in a new and more invigorating way, if you will.
Well, Mr. Higgs, I can't thank you enough for joining me today and telling us more about Cave Hill and the Heritage Foundation. Thank you so much. I really appreciated hearing your insights. I hope we get to connect again sometime.
Absolutely. Pleasure to meet you and great to have this time with you this afternoon. Thank you so much.